My husband labeled our daughter a family disgrace, while his party raged on. Our little girl sought refuge on the balcony, weeping, but he was unaware of the cameras I had placed, so I witnessed it all. Before we start, please leave a repentance comment to tell us where you're watching from. We're very eager to know. We trust you'll enjoy this story. Captivating tale. Anaya departed from her office ahead of schedule, feeling exceptionally lighthearted. The client meeting had been a triumph. The deal was secured, and the director dismissed the team early, which was an exceptionally rare occasion. Piece of good fortune in their hectic schedule. She took out her car keys, checked her watch. It was 6:30. Typically, at this hour, she would just be preparing to pack up her desk, but today she was already getting comfortable in the Tista side driver's seat. It was a pleasant spring evening, warm without being oppressive. The sun dipped below the roofs, coloring the sky with gentle hues of orange and purple. Anaya started the car, reclined in her seat, and briefly shut her eyes. Eyes for a moment. The day at work was grueling, filled with negotiations, document revisions, and constant calls, yet it all went well. Out, allowing her to finally relax. During her commute, she switched on the radio. A mellow R&B song was on. A very soothing and soulful tune. The DJ was discussing the weekend forecast, but Anaya wasn't fully paying attention. Her mind wandered to that morning's discussion with Jabari. He was over by the coffee machine then, looking at his phone when he announced abruptly, not even glancing up, "Just so you know, my coworkers are coming by." Over this evening, we're celebrating the end of our project. Anaya simply nodded, pouring some tea for herself into her favorite blue cup. "Okay, what time?" "Around 7. You'll be home late regardless, so don't sweat it. I've got this." "All handled. I'll order some soul food. Get the drinks." She recalled 8-year-old Amari sitting there at the table. Her grits half finished, her legs dangling beneath the chair, as she quietly asked, "Daddy, will we watch cartoons together this evening?" "You promised me. You said it was definite." Jabari never once looked up from his device. His phone. His thumbs were a blur on the screen, obviously messaging someone. "Amari, not this evening. I have guests arriving. Very important people. Just go to your room, all right? Find something to play. You have a ton of toys." The child's gaze fell to her plate, and she fell silent. She simply moved her spoon through her now cold grits. Anaya gently caressed her daughter's braided hair and made a soft promise to her. "Tomorrow, we will absolutely go to the park. We can get ice cream and go on the swings." Amari just nodded, but the sadness in her eyes was palpable. Jabari was already exiting the kitchen, fastening his shirt, and mumbling about his presentations and deadlines. Now, stopped in her car at a traffic signal. Red light. Anaya felt a pang of worry. Amari was just 8 years old, and she had been so excited about the evening with her dad. Lately, Jabari had been working late non-stop, returning home exhausted and quite short-tempered. Their little girl did everything she could to avoid him, retreating to her room with her books. He once read her stories at bedtime, assist with her puzzles, and play games with her, but these days he hardly acknowledged she existed. Anaya's mind flashed back a week, to Amari proudly presenting a drawing, a vivid watercolor landscape she'd created in her art class. The little girl was beaming with pride. Her teacher had even lauded her efforts before the entire class. Amari had offered the artwork to Jabari, who was immersed in his laptop in the living room. "Daddy, see what I made," he cast. A fleeting glance, nodding. "Nice work. It's pretty. Just stick it on the fridge," before his eyes returned to the glowing screen. Amari lingered for just a second more before quietly turning away. That very evening, Anaya happened to find the artwork wadded into a ball inside the trash. Her daughter claimed she'd tossed it because it wasn't any good after all. The traffic signal switched to green. Anaya accelerated through the intersection, making the turn onto their block. Instantly, She saw the row of vehicles lining the curb. Pricey SUVs and a couple of high-end sedans. She identified the black Escalade that belonged to Trevon, Jabari's second-in-command, Desmond's gray sedan, their head engineer, and the white Lexus owned by Brianna from accounting. It seemed nearly the entire department was there. As she edged closer to the building, she could hear the music. Light was pouring from the windows of their apartment on the third floor. Every chandelier was lit, the curtains were thrown open, and a mix of loud voices, laughter, and a deep hip-hop beat floated down to the street below. Anaya pulled into a spot near the entrance, killed the engine, and just sat, her gaze fixed on the windows. A deep instinct warned her that something was wrong. An indefinable sense of unease settled over her. She finally stepped out of the car, locking it before walking to the building's entrance. The night air was heavy with the sweet scent of lilacs. The shrubs near the porch were bursting with blossoms, their weighty purple clusters drooping over the path. Anaya started up the stairs, the music swelling in volume with each flight she climbed. On the first-floor landing, a lone beer bottle was lying on its side. Likely just some teens who'd forgotten to tidy up. Then, on the second floor, her neighbor Miss Pearlie peered out from the crack in her doorway. The security chain clinked as a displeased, creased face emerged. They're certainly raising a ruckus up there today. A body can't sleep. It's been near an hour now. My apologies, Miss Pearlie, Anaya answered in a low voice, pausing on the landing. I will go and tell them to be quieter immediately. Yes, you do that. You go on and ask them, the older woman groused. Because I was just about to ring the sheriff. This racket is sending my pressure sky high. With that, Miss Pearlie shut her door, and Anaya could hear her slippers scuffing down the hall as she muttered about the youth of today and their lack of proper raising. Anaya sighed, continuing to the third floor. She paused before her own front door. On the other side, the music was thundering, impossibly loud now. The deep bass seemed to shake the very walls. She could make out voices, the tinkle of glasses, and a woman's piercing laugh. Someone was boisterously telling a joke. The voice was strange to her, a bit hoarse. And then the guy goes, "Who says it was me?" A roar of laughter erupted. Somebody applauded loudly. And Jabari's laugh was the most boisterous of all. "Desmond, you're a menace. Where do you come up with this stuff?" Anaya pulled her keys from her handbag, but her hand stopped midway to the lock. An impulse made her glance up. She could see their balcony door. It was in view through the stairwell window just across the way. Their apartment balcony was enclosed in glass, but at this moment, a single pane was ajar. And out on the balcony, huddled against the railing, sat a tiny figure. It was Amari. The child was on the floor, her arms wrapped tightly around her knees. Even from the stairwell, Anaya could see her small shoulders trembling. A cold dread seized her. Anaya swiftly turned the key, shoving the door open in a rush, and hurried inside. The entryway was a mess of footwear, boots, heels, and sneakers all jumbled on the mat, and since there was no space, guests had carelessly tossed them aside. The air was thick with costly perfume, stale smoke, and a pungent, spicy scent. Someone had likely brought jerk chicken. From the living room, Jabari's voice boomed, full of self-satisfaction. Then I said to the client, "If you're looking for cheap, hire students. If you want quality, then you don't bargain with me." And what do you know? He accepted our price without another word. The room erupted in appreciative laughter. A hand slammed the table, making the dishes clatter. A woman's voice cooed with admiration. "Jabari, you are a master negotiator." "Oh, please," Jabari said, clearly reveling in the praise. "You simply have to know how to hold your own. It takes character, you understand? Character and self-assurance." Meanwhile, Anaya slipped off her heels, placing them tidily in a corner that still had room. She hung her purse on its hook. Her movements were mechanical, but her every thought was fixed on the balcony. She crept silently down the hall, slipping past the open doorway to the living room. From the corner of her eye, she glimpsed the scene within. The main dining table was shoved against the window, with 8 people seated around it. The men wore crisp shirts, the women elegant dresses, bottles of fine wine and premium cognac littered the table, next to platters of cured meats, salads, and sushi boxes. Jabari was at the head of it all, standing, with a glass in hand, his face red from alcohol and exhilaration. The top button of his shirt was undone. He gestured with his free hand, elaborating on some point. No one even saw Anaya. She made it to the balcony door. Normally, it was kept closed, but it was now ajar by about 4 inches. A thin ribbon of cold night air seeped into the apartment. Anaya gently pushed the door open further and stepped outside. Amari was on the floor in the most distant corner of the balcony, her back tight against the cold wall. She clutched her knees, her face hidden between them. The little girl's shoulders were shaking. She had on a pale pink t-shirt adorned with a unicorn and a pair of jeans, nothing warmer, and it was chilly out on the balcony. The spring night was still cool, and a sharp wind cut through the metal railings. "Amari, my love," Anaya murmured, kneeling beside her daughter. "Sweetheart," she whispered again. Her daughter startled, lifting her head. Her eyes were bloodshot, puffy, and glistening. Tear tracks stained her cheeks. Her small lips were trembling. Dark rings underscored her eyes. It was clear she had been weeping intensely, and for quite some time. Anaya felt a crushing sensation in her chest, as if an iron band were constricting her. "Mama!" Amari cried out, and launched herself into her mother's arms. Anaya gathered her daughter up, holding her tightly. The child's tiny frame was shivering. Amari pressed her face into her mother's shoulder, her crying resuming, though muffled now, as if trying to stifle the sound. Anaya could feel the tension in her small body, the immense effort she was making to hold back her sobs. "Shh, my love, I'm here," Anaya whispered, smoothing her daughter's hair. Her braids were in disarray. A hair tie had slid to one side. "It's all right. Mommy's right here. Everything will be all right." She removed her blazer, gently draping it across Amari's shoulders. The girl gave a grateful nod, burrowing even closer to her mother. From within the apartment came the sounds of music and chatter. Someone offered a toast. Glasses chimed. "What happened, sweetheart?" Anaya asked softly, leaning back just enough to see her face. "Why are you out here by yourself? What made you cry? Tell me everything." Amari sniffled, rubbing her cheeks with her palm. Her small hands were also red from the chill. Anaya took them into hers, starting to chafe them for warmth. "Daddy," her voice quivered. "Daddy said I was embarrassing him in front of his guests." Anaya went still. Her ears were ringing as if a gong had been struck beside her head. She stared at her daughter, at her tear-streaked face, her quivering lips, her terrified eyes, and felt a hot, searing rage rising deep inside her, coursing through her very veins. "How exactly were you embarrassing him?" Anaya cupped her daughter's face, making Amari meet her gaze. She spoke softly, but with firm resolve. "Tell me exactly what happened. You don't have to be afraid." Amari gave one last sob, then started to explain, stumbling over her own swallowed words. When the guests arrived, Daddy sent me to my room. So I went and shut the door. I was just sitting there, drawing a princess. I wanted to show it to you, but then I got thirsty. I snuck into the kitchen for water, so quietly. "Mama, I promise." I was even on my tiptoes. Another burst of laughter erupted from the living room. More glasses clinked together. Someone shouted, "To us! To the team!" Anaya pulled her daughter closer. "And what happened next?" she prompted, forcing her voice to stay calm. "I got to the kitchen and poured water from the pitcher. Then one of the men came out. I think for water as well. He saw me, and he smiled. He asked, "And who might this be?" "Then Daddy." Amari choked on a sob. Her voice trembled violently. Daddy stood up so fast and marched over. He grabbed my arm, like this. She rubbed her wrist, and Anaya saw the red mark against her delicate skin, the shape of fingerprints. The fire inside her blazed even hotter. He told him, "This is my daughter, and she is going to her room immediately." They all laughed, and he dragged me to the hall. "It hurt so much, Mama." He was squeezing so hard. In the hall, he bent down and just hissed into my face. He was so angry, and his eyes were so scary. He said, "I ordered you to stay in your room. Do not embarrass me in front of my guests. Now get out of my sight." Anaya could feel her own hands trembling. She balled them into fists, nails digging into her flesh. It was suddenly hard to breathe, as though the air itself had turned to lead. "And what did you do then?" she asked, already certain of the answer. I was scared. And I started to cry. "It hurt my feelings so bad, Mama. I only wanted some water." Then he grabbed me by my shoulders and just shoved me out here, onto the balcony. He told me, "Go cry out there where nobody can see or hear you, so you won't ruin my whole evening." So I came out, and I sat down, and I cried. Amari broke down completely, burying her face into Anaya's shoulder. Anaya held her tight, rubbing her back, her gaze fixed on the slightly ajar door to the flat where Jabari was still. Celebrating as if nothing was wrong, sharing jokes, clinking glasses with his colleagues, and basking in their admiration. While his 8-year-old girl shivered on a freezing balcony, weeping, Anaya simply kept holding her daughter. Feeling her tiny body begin to settle, the sobs turning to soft whimpers, her breathing evening out, she stroked Amari's back, pulling her closer, but a tempest was brewing inside her, an anger so sharp and white-hot it stole her breath. But she forced it down. Calming her child was the only thing that mattered. "How long were you sitting out here, sweetie?" Anaya whispered, kissing the crown of her daughter's head. Amari sniffled. "A long time, I think. I got so cold. But I was afraid to come back inside, afraid that Daddy would yell at me again." Anaya squeezed her eyes shut for a moment, gathering her fortitude. She then pulled away, looking her daughter in the eyes. "Amari, you must listen to me. You are not at fault for anything. Do you understand me? You did nothing wrong. You simply wanted some water. That is normal. This is your home, and you have every right to go to the kitchen whenever you need to. But Daddy said, your daddy was wrong," Anaya stated firmly. "Extremely wrong, and I am going to address this right now. I promise." Amari looked up at her mother with wide eyes. A flicker of hope ignited within them, then instantly vanished. "He's just going to be angrier. He won't. Not at you." Anaya cupped her daughter's cheeks. "I promise I will never allow him to treat you this way again. Never. You understand?" The little girl nodded slowly. Anaya got to her feet, helping her daughter up. "Come on, let's get you to your room. Wrap up in a blanket, you can watch some cartoons. I'm going to have a little talk with your daddy." They entered the apartment, where the music and voices had grown louder. Someone was telling a long story about a company party. The others were howling with laughter. Anaya steered Amari down the hallway past the living room. This time, someone saw her. Brianna from accounting turned and gave a little wave. "Oh, Anaya, we just figured you were running late." Jabari's head whipped around. For a split second, his face contorted with fear or irritation, but he quickly composed himself with a smile. "Anaya, honey, you're back. That's great. Come and join the party." Anaya strode silently past him, still holding her daughter's hand, leading her to the bedroom and switching on the light. On the desk sat Colored pencils beside an unfinished princess, what Amari was doing before her thirst started. "Lie down on your bed and get cozy," Anaya said, grabbing her daughter's favorite kitten blanket off the shelf. "You can watch something on your tablet. I'll be right back." "Mama," Amari said softly as Anaya was about to exit, You're not going to fight?" "With Daddy? It's just that he can be scary when he gets that mad." Anaya stopped at the door, turned back, sat on the bed beside her daughter, and hugged her once more. "Sunshine, I won't ever let him hurt you. You are the single most important part of my life, the most precious, and if fighting with Daddy is what I must do to protect you, I will. Don't you be afraid." Amari nodded, burying her face into her pillow. Anaya pulled up the blanket, smoothed down her hair, and exited, gently closing the door behind her. In the hall, she stopped, leaning, her back flat against the wall and taking a deep, shuddering breath. Her hands still shook. Her daughter's words echoed in her mind. "He grabbed my arm. He was so angry. He told me I was disgracing him." Anaya vividly remembered the red marks. Amari's wrist. She pictured the girl on the frigid balcony, trembling from the cold and her own sobs. How often had this occurred? How frequently had Jabari mistreated their daughter like this when Anaya wasn't home? She remembered. The past several months, how Amari had grown more silent, more reserved, how she ceased sharing school stories with her father, how she retreated to her room when he returned from work. Anaya had dismissed it as her age, a passing stage, assuming it would all resolve. But she now realized it wasn't a stage, it was terror. Her child was terrified of her own father. Anaya pulled her phone from her pocket and launched the home security camera application. They'd had them installed a year prior following a burglary at a neighboring apartment. There were 3 cameras, one in the living room, one in the corridor by the main entrance, and one inside the kitchen. The devices recorded continuously, with footage kept for 1 week. She rewound to the previous hour. Scanning forward revealed guests entering, Jabari welcoming them and serving beverages. Anaya halted the video and changed the view to the hallway camera. There, at 6:47 in the evening, Amari came into view. She moved down the hall on the tips of her toes, clasping an empty glass against her chest. She entered the kitchen. Anaya changed the feed to the kitchen camera. The child neared the table with the water pitcher, filling her glass with water. Just then, a man stepped into the kitchen. It was Desmond, the chief engineer. He smiled, spoke something to Amari. Amari replied, smiling in return. Desmond bent down, likely inquiring about her name. And then Jabari stormed into the kitchen, his face flushed red, his jaw tight. He strode swiftly toward his daughter, seizing her by the arm. Anaya watched his fingers press into the child's slender wrist. Amari winced from the pain. Desmond retreated a step, a look of confused amusement on his face. Jabari spoke to his colleague. Anaya could decipher his lips. "This is my daughter. She's heading to her room now." He smiled, but it was a strained, artificial expression. He pulled Amari from the kitchen and into the corridor. Anaya toggled back to the hallway camera's view. There they were in the frame. Jabari whirled his daughter around to face him, stooped low, and said something. Even silently, it was clear how viciously he was hissing. Amari flinched back, her eyes wide with terror, and began to cry. Jabari seized her by the shoulders, coarsely, abruptly, and thrust her toward the balcony door. The child stumbled, nearly lost her footing, but regained her balance. She glanced back at her father, but he was already turning away, heading back toward the guests. Amari remained for a moment, weeping, before slowly making her way to the balcony. Anaya blanked her phone's screen, her hands balled into fists so tightly her knuckles were bleached white. She shut her eyes, struggling for control, but it was futile. Rage surged within her, so potent it felt like an imminent explosion. She had witnessed it all, watched how her husband had seized their daughter, how he had pushed her, how he never once glanced back as he left, How many other times had this occurred? How many incidents had she been blind to while working late, placing her trust in Jabari? Anaya recalled an evening 2 weeks prior. When she arrived home, Amari was in her room, uncharacteristically silent. When she asked what was wrong, the girl replied, "Nothing, Mama. Just tired." The following day, Anaya spotted a bruise on her daughter's shoulder and questioned where she'd gotten it. Amari claimed she had fallen during her physical education class. But now, Anaya knew, she hadn't fallen. Jabari had gripped her just as forcefully. With equal force, how could she not have perceived it? How could she be so blind? Another peal of laughter erupted from the living room. Jabari was recounting a story about a client. His voice was pleased, almost smug. Anaya opened her eyes, her gaze fixed on the living room. No, enough. She would no longer avert her gaze from the truth. She would stop blaming it on his fatigue and work stress, and stop pretending that everything was normal. Anaya straightened her posture, squared her shoulders, then checked her phone a final time. The video was saved, ready to display. Good. She walked toward the living room, pausing in the entryway. All 8 of their guests were seated at the table. Some were eating, others were drinking. Jabari stood by the window, a glass of cognac in hand, gesturing to explain a point to Trayvon. Brianna was idly scrolling on her phone. Near the open window, Desmond was in the process of lighting up a cigarette. A typical party, with ordinary people. None of them knew what had transpired in this apartment just an hour before. "Ania, you're here at last," Brianna exclaimed, seeing her. "We worried you wouldn't join us. Sit down. Come on, there's a seat." "Right here." "Yeah, Anaya. Come on in," Trayvon chimed in. "We're just discussing the new project Jabari was talking about." To us, how he managed to convince the client. Jabari turned, offering his wife a smile, but Anaya saw the tension behind his eyes. He could sense something was amiss. "Honey, can I pour you some wine?" he asked, stepping closer to her. "Or some cognac. It's the good French kind." Ania moved silently past him toward the television. A large unit was mounted on the wall. A 55-inch television. Jabari bought it last year. He was proud of his purchase. "The screen was currently dark. I don't require anything," she stated calmly. Her voice was level, but inside she was seething. She bent down, reaching for something behind. The media unit to get the HDMI cable they used for watching movies from their laptop. "Anaya, what are you doing?" Jabari demanded. A hint of nervousness had crept into his tone. He moved another step closer. Anaya did not reply. She attached the adapter to her phone, inserted the other end into the TV, and powered on the set with the remote control. The logo flashed on screen, then the input menu appeared. She selected the HDMI port. "Anaya, what is happening?" Jabari now stood directly beside her, leaning in close. "We have guests here. Did you decide to put on a movie or what?" The guests grew quiet, observing her with keen curiosity. Brianna lowered her phone. Desmond extinguished his cigarette. Trayvon placed his glass on the table. "It's not a movie," Anaya replied softly, standing up. She then turned to her husband and looked him directly in the eye. "A documentary about what took place in this apartment an hour ago." Jabari turned pale and took a step back. "What are you even talking about?" Anaya unlocked her phone, launched the camera app, and located the saved video file, and pressed play. On the large television, an image appeared. The kitchen camera. All of the guests turned to face the screen. On the recording, Amari poured a glass of water for herself. Then Desmond came into the kitchen. He said something to the girl and smiled. "That is our kitchen," Trayvon remarked, bewildered. "This is a recording." Anaya nodded. Jabari then appeared on screen. The guests watched as he suddenly went up to his daughter, seizing her by the arm. On the screen, Desmond took a step back. The smile was instantly gone from his face. Jabari spoke, then dragged the girl away. From the kitchen, Ania then changed the feed to the hallway camera. The new view showed the corridor as Jabari spun. Amari to confront him, leaning close. His expression was contorted with malice as his lips moved rapidly, furiously. The child flinched back and began to weep. A heavy silence descended on the living room. Even the background music felt utterly out of place. Every eye was fixed on the monitor, unblinking. On screen, Jabari seized his young daughter by the shoulders and thrust her away, roughly and sharply. Amari stumbled, regained her footing, and stared at her father with wide, teary eyes. As he was already turning his back and walking off, Anya stopped the recording, shut off the television, and faced the guests. The room was utterly silent. Brianna covered her mouth with her hand, her eyes wide with horror. Desmond simply lowered his gaze, studying his own hands. Trayvon stared at Jabari with an odd look, a combination of sheer bewilderment and disapproval. "That," Jabari began, but his voice broke. Clearing his throat, he tried once more. "It's not what you think. I was just under a lot of pressure. It's precisely what we saw," Anya cut in calmly. She stood beside the TV, her arms folded across her chest. "You seized our 8-year-old daughter," shouted at her, and pushed her away just because she walked into the kitchen to get a drink of water in her own house. She was meant to be in her room. I told her that. You told her to stay there because she's an embarrassment to you before guests," Anya said softly, but each word landed like a punch. "An 8-year-old child embarrasses you." "Just consider those words, Jabari." He remained silent, his face flushed, jaw tight, and fists clenched by his sides. "And then you commanded her to go cry out on the balcony where she couldn't be seen or heard, so she would not spoil your perfect evening." Anya took a deliberate step forward. "I discovered her out there on the freezing balcony, trembling and in tears. She was terrified to even come back inside because she was afraid you would just scream at her again." Brianna sniffled softly, dabbing her eyes with a napkin. "Anya, I had no idea things like this were going on," Desmond murmured. "If I'd known, I never would have." "You're not to blame for anything," Anya replied, meeting his gaze. "You didn't know, but you do now." Then she turned back to face Jabari. "And so do I. I know this was not the first time. Remember that bruise on Amari's shoulder 2 weeks ago? She claimed she fell during gym class, but that wasn't a fall, was it? You grabbed her that time too." Jabari remained silent, but his expression confirmed she was right. "How long has this been happening?" Anya demanded of him. "How long are you been handling our daughter like this when my back is turned?" I don't lay a hand on her," he mumbled. "No, you don't beat her. You just seize her arm hard enough to leave marks. You push, you scream, you intimidate, and you humiliate." Anya felt her own voice begin to shake, but she pressed on. "She is terrified of you, Jabari. Our own daughter is frightened of her own father." The silence that filled the living room was so profound you could hear the steady ticking of the clock on the wall. At last, Anya exhaled, stood taller, and met her husband's gaze directly. "First thing tomorrow morning, I am filing for divorce." Jabari froze completely, as if he couldn't process her words. The glass trembled. In his hand, the cognac sloshing over the rim, he slowly shook his head, his expression a flash of confusion mixed with rising panic on his features. "You can't be serious. Because of one incident? Anaya, you have to see that I was just under immense pressure closing that project. My nerves were completely shot." "It's not one incident," Anaya interrupted, her voice entirely flat and cold. "And even if it were, one is sufficient, more than sufficient. But we can discuss this like adults. I am an adult, and I have already made my decision." Anaya folded her arms across her chest. "Tomorrow morning, I'm seeing a lawyer." Jabari slammed the glass on the broad table with enough force to nearly overturn it. Cognac sloshed onto the linen. He dragged a hand over his face, raking through his hair. Droplets of sweat beaded on his forehead. The air in the room was suffocating. The guests exchanged nervous glances, their eyes wide and uncertain, unsure of how to react. It was Brianna who shattered the silence. Rising quietly from her seat, she collected her purse from the creaking spotty neighboring chair. I believe I should be going now." "Excuse me," she stammered, her voice shaking. She moved swiftly toward the exit without Devon. Another word. Trayvon also rose, straightening his tie and giving a small nod to Anaya. "Yeah, we should head out as well, Jabari." "We can talk at the office on Monday?" He deliberately avoided Jabari's gaze, snatching his jacket from the back of his chair and heading for the hallway. The remaining guests started to collect their things in awkward silence. One mumbled an apology. Another simply grabbed their coat. Desmond paused by the living room entrance, then approached Anaya, stopping just a couple of feet from her. "Away from her. If you should need, well, a witness or something," he murmured, his voice low enough to avoid Jabari's ear. "I saw what transpired in the kitchen. I'm a father too. I have a daughter her age. What he did, that wasn't right at all. I am prepared to verify everything in court, if it comes to that." Anaya's eyes met his, filled with immense gratitude. She nodded slowly. "Thank you, I might reach out." Desmond nodded back and left. The remaining guests shuffled into the hallway, pulling on shoes, zipping up coats. Nobody dared look at Jabari. He remained standing in the middle of the living room, completely alone and lost, his arms hanging limply. His face was ashen, dark shadows pooled beneath his eyes. Trayvon was the last one to leave. He was already in the doorway, but he turned back for a moment. He held Jabari's gaze. "Jabari, you have seriously messed this up. I hope you realize that. After what we saw, I have no idea how you fix something like that, but you need to try." The door clicked shut behind him. With a soft click, a deep silence fell over the apartment. The only sounds were the refrigerator's low hum and the distant dripping of a faucet. Somewhere. Jabari remained motionless, his gaze fixed on the closed door, before he slowly turned to face Anaya. "Well, I hope you're happy," he asked, his voice echoing with emptiness. "You just humiliated me in front of all my colleagues. Now everyone at the office will be buzzing about this." Anaya could hardly believe what she was hearing. "Did he really just say that? I humiliated you?" she asked slowly. "Seriously? You mistreat your own child, and your main concern is what your colleagues are going to think. That's not the same. It is precisely the same thing." Anaya's voice suddenly erupted into a shout, surprising even herself. She was not a yeller, but at this moment, she couldn't contain it. "You're more concerned with your reputation than with the fact that you brought your own child to tears, that you absolutely terrified her, that she was sitting on a frigid balcony, too scared to come back inside her own home." Jabari flinched, instinctively stepping back. Something shifted in his expression. Was it fear, or was it shame? He opened his mouth to speak, then shut it, then tried again. "Anaya, let's just talk normally. Without all of this drama. We're adults. We can." "Calmly? Is that what you call this?" Anaya advanced on him. "You call this drama?" Our little girl was sobbing on the balcony. "And you dare call that drama?" "I just needed this evening to be perfect." He moved toward her, trying to grasp her hand, but Anaya pulled back fiercely. "My most important colleagues were here. I had to impress them. This entire project represents a huge step in my career. Amari chose a bad time and I overreacted, but it doesn't mean that." "A wrong moment?" Anaya stared as if he were a complete stranger. "A wrong moment to get water in her own house? Jabari, can you even hear yourself?" "I told her that I had company. You didn't just explain." Anaya's hands began to tremble once more. She clenched them tightly. "You seized her arm with enough force to leave bruises." You pushed her. You called her a disgrace, an 8-year-old girl, your own daughter. Jabari turned his back, striding to the window, staring down at the lane below. The street was silent, lamplight spilling across deserted sidewalks. Then he pressed his forehead to the chilling pain. I never meant to hurt her. His voice became a faint, nearly a whisper. It's just. In that second, I saw red. It was completely impulsive. I wasn't thinking. Impulsively, you gripped her arm hard enough to bruise. Anaya closed the distance. Her tone iced over. Impulsively pushed her. How? Many other times was it just an impulse. He said nothing. Answer me, Anaya insisted. How many times have you acted like this? With her. How often, when I was at my job and you? I can't remember, he mumbled, his back still to her. Perhaps a few times, but I have never struck her. Ever. You know I'm not that man. Don't remember? A fresh tide of rage surged inside Anaya. Once more. It means it occurred so frequently, you lost count. Am I understanding you correctly? Jabari whirled to face her. His eyes shone, with tears or with fury. I did not hit her. Never. I have never laid a hand on her. I just get harsh. At times. But I don't harm children. I'm not that type of person. You seize her. You push her. You yell. You terrify her. Anaya listened with a calm, mechanical stillness. Each word an effort. That is also violence, Jabari. It's psychological and emotional, and no less damaging than physical abuse. Perhaps worse, you are overreacting. I'm not overreacting! Anaya's voice shattered into a scream. She moved toward him, and he reflexively pressed himself against the wall. I discovered our daughter weeping on the balcony. She was trembling from the cold and from terror. She was too scared to come inside, into her very own home. That is not an exaggeration. Jabari lifted his hands in a defensive gesture, as if to shield himself. Anaya, stop yelling! No, I refused to stop. Tears finally broke free, flowing down Anaya's cheeks, but she didn't wipe them away. Do you know what she said to me? She whispered. I'm scared of him. Our own daughter is terrified of her. Father, can you comprehend that? Afraid? The single word lingered between them. Jabari went rigid, his back to the wall, all color drained from his face. His mouth fell open, but no sound emerged. He simply stood there, staring at Anaya with vacant, wide eyes. He finally managed to get out. I didn't know. You didn't know? Anaya wiped her tears with the back of her hand. How could you possibly not know? Did you not see how silent she's become? How she quit coming to you? How she would hide in her room the moment you got home from work? Jabari remained silent. He gradually slid down the wall, collapsing to the floor and hugging, his face buried in his hands. Anaya watched him, his shoulders trembling, perhaps from tears, perhaps from the effort to contain himself. She couldn't tell. And right then, she found she didn't care. I am filing for a divorce. In the morning, she stated. Her voice was steady now. And it is absolutely not up for discussion. Anaya, please wait. Jabari looked up, his eyes glistening with tears. Let's talk. Give me one more chance. Just one. To make this right. I will see a therapist if that's what it takes. I will work on me. I will learn to manage my temper. I will apologize to Amari. Just don't divorce me. Please. I love you. I love you both. Love isn't just words, Anaya replied. It's about actions, and your actions have told a very different story. I can change. Give me time. How often have I heard that same promise? Anaya met his gaze, her own exhausted. The anger had evaporated, leaving only a deep weariness in its place. Remember 6 months back, when you vowed to spend more time with Amari, to read stories, to play games, to attend her school functions? How many times did you follow through? 3, 4 times in 6 months? Jabari said nothing. You swore you would be more patient with her, that you wouldn't snap over small things or raise your voice, and yet, Anaya spread her hands. You push her away for getting a glass of water. You tell her she's a disgrace. You terrify her so much that she is afraid in her own home. Anaya, I swear I will try. Your promises are worthless, she cut him off. You make a promise, then nothing changes. Or it lasts for a week before we're right back here. How many times has this happened? I am tired of believing your promises. She turned and strode to the front door, snatching the keys from the hallway table and her purse from its hook. Jabari sprang up from the couch, hurrying after her. Anaya, where are you? Going? Wait! I'm getting Amari's things. We're leaving now. Leaving? What are you talking about? Where will you go? Anaya went to the closet and retrieved the large blue duffel bag from their trips. To my sister's place. We can stay there. And in the morning I'm finding a lawyer to begin the divorce proceedings. Anaya, please stop. Jabari reached for her elbow, but she ripped her arm from his grasp so fiercely he staggered backward. Do not touch me. Her voice was as cold as ice. Jabari froze in place, his hands falling to his sides. He could only watch as Anaya carried the bag toward their child's room. He wanted to follow but hesitated at the doorway, unable to cross it. Amari was on her bed, tucked beneath the blankets, her headphones on, absorbed in something on her tablet. When she saw her mother, she removed them and sat up. Mama, is everything all right? Have the guests gone home? Yes, my sunshine. Anaya sat on the bed's edge, gently stroking her daughter's face. I need you to pack some things. Only what's most important. We are going to stay with Aunt Za for a little while. For a long while. Amari looked directly into her mother's eyes. There was no fear there, just a silent question, a calm and trusting one. Yes, honey, Anaya confirmed, perhaps for a very long time. Amari studied her mother carefully, then gave a slow nod and slid down from the bed and walked over to her closet. Okay. She asked no questions and shed no tears. She just began pulling her things out. Anaya helped her fold the clothes, pajamas, a couple of t-shirts, jeans, sweaters, and underthings, then took her daughter's favorite books from the shelf, fairy tales, and a collection of animal stories. She grabbed the tablet, headphones, and the chargers. What about Daddy? Amari murmured while they secured the suitcase. Her gaze was fixed on her own small hands, avoiding her mother's eyes. Anaya knelt before her daughter, gently taking her warm little palms and looking directly into her troubled eyes. We won't be living with Daddy any longer. I know this might be difficult to understand, and perhaps you feel sad, but it's for the best for us both. I promise. Amari nodded slowly. Her eyes showed no shock, no resistance, just a silent, profound sense of relief. A feeling she tried to conceal, but one Anaya saw clearly. I'm glad, the child whispered, her voice so faint Anaya almost missed it. Mama, I think I'll miss him sometimes, but he scares me. With you, I feel safe. Anaya immediately pulled her daughter into a tight hug, holding her incredibly close. A knot formed in her throat and fresh tears threatened to spill, but she refused to let them. Not at this moment. In this moment, her strength was for Amari. They emerged from the room with their luggage, only to find Jabari waiting in the hallway. He was slumped against the wall, observing them with a haggard face and red-rimmed eyes. Amari, he started, his voice cracking with emotion. He moved a step closer to his daughter. Please, forgive me. I never meant to hurt you. Truly, I was so wrong. So very wrong. Please forgive your daddy. Amari shrank against Anaya, remaining silent and hiding behind her as if hoping to disappear completely from view. Anaya encircled her daughter's shoulders, creating a shield with her own body. Step aside, Jabari. Anaya, I'm begging you, don't do this. Move, she insisted, her tone resolute and leaving no room for argument. He reluctantly moved aside, his back flat against the wall. Anaya guided Amari past him toward the main door, then helped her daughter into her pink spring jacket with its hood, zipped it fully, adjusted the collar, assisted with her boots, and then slipped on her own shoes. After that, she picked up the suitcase. "This apartment belonged to my grandmother," Anaya stated, turning to face Jabari one final time. "She left it to me in her will. The property is legally in my name. Tomorrow, I am filing for divorce, and you need to begin looking for a new place to reside. You can't just throw me out onto the street. I can, and I am." Anaya then proceeded to open the door. A chill draft from the stairwell seeped into the apartment. "You have 1 week to vacate. If you refuse to leave of your own accord, I will take legal action and you will be forcibly evicted. Leave the keys with our neighbor, Miss Pearlie. I will collect them from her later." Ina. But she was already out on the landing, grasping Amari's hand tightly in her own. Her little girl was carrying her little backpack, which held her most cherished toys, the plush bear she couldn't sleep without, and a set of colored pencils. Anaya shut the door firmly, never once looking back. She could hear Jabari's weight slump against the wood on the other side. She heard his deep, shuddering exhale. Perhaps he was crying. She didn't know, and didn't want to. They descended the stairs without a word. Amari gripped her mother's hand firmly. As they reached the second floor, Miss Pearlie once again peered out through the crack in her doorway. "Is everything all right now?" "Yes, Miss Pearlie. I do apologize for the disturbance." "Oh, don't you worry." The elderly woman then glanced toward their bag. She seemed to understand but asked no questions, only saying, "You are making the right choice. I heard how he was yelling at that little girl. That is no way for a father to behave." Anaya gave a grateful nod and continued leading her daughter away. It was cool outside, with the scent of lilacs and newly cut grass in the air. The crisp night air felt restorative, finally allowing her to take a deep breath. Anaya slid behind the steering wheel, secured Amari in the back, placed the suitcase in the trunk, and then started the engine. Her trembling hands clutched the steering wheel. She tightened her grip, took a deep breath, and pulled away from the kind of curb with slow care. Glancing in the rearview mirror, she watched Amari stare out the window as one tear traced a path down her daughter's cheek, which she quickly brushed away with her sleeve. "Everything will be just fine, my little sunshine," Anaya murmured, her eyes meeting her daughter's in the mirror. "I promise we will overcome this." "I know, Mama," Amari replied softly. "I always feel safe with you. You're my protector." Anaya's heart ached hearing those words. She just nodded, unable to speak, and kept driving, leaving behind the house where her child had wept on a frigid balcony, away from the man meant to be their shield, who had only brought them sorrow. The future was uncertain. A divorce awaited, court hearings, a different life. What truly mattered was their unity, Amari's safety. All else was endurable. The next morning, Anaya awoke to the aroma of coffee and sizzling pancakes. Her head throbbed, feeling as though she hadn't slept. A wink, despite finally drifting into an exhausted sleep around 3 a.m. Pushing herself up on the sofa, she rubbed her face with both hands. Za's voice floated from the kitchen, humming a tune amidst the clatter of dishes. Anaya rose, slipping on the robe her sister had thoughtfully left for her on a chair, and then entered the kitchen. Za was by the stove, turning pancakes. A platter piled high with them was on the table next to the syrup and butter. "Morning," Za said, turning to face her, and smiled. "Did you get any rest?" "Not really," Anaya confessed candidly. "But that's expected. Amari's still sleeping. Just let her sleep in. School can wait for a day." Za then poured coffee for Anaya into an oversized mug. "Here you go. It's strong, the way you like." Anaya accepted the mug and took a small sip. The scalding coffee was a welcome jolt, a sensation that pulled her back to the present moment. She sat down at the table and gazed outside. It was a bright morning. Sunlight illuminated the courtyard where mothers were already out walking with their strollers. I scheduled an appointment for you with a lawyer at 11 o'clock, Za said, taking a seat across from her. Her name is Rosalind Price. She's excellent. I've worked alongside her on a few cases. She's tough, but she's also fair. Exactly what you need. Thank you, Anaya said with a nod. Za, I seriously don't know how to repay you. Oh, don't start that, Za said, waving it off. You've done more than enough for me. Remember when I was leaving Marcus? You let me stay with you for 2 whole months while I was searching for an apartment. It's been a while, but I haven't forgotten. Za slid a pancake onto Anaya's plate. You need to eat. You need your strength. Anaya dutifully picked up her fork and cut a small piece. Her mouth felt like cotton. She had no appetite but made herself eat anyway. Za was right. The day ahead would be difficult. Once breakfast was over, Anaya went to check on Amari. The little girl was already awake, settled in bed with her tablet and watching cartoons. She smiled upon seeing her mother. Good morning, Mama. Morning, my sunshine. Anaya sat on the bed beside her. Did you sleep well? I did. It's so quiet here. Amari set her tablet aside. Are we going home again? Eventually, but not just yet. Your daddy needs a little time to gather his things, Anaya said, gently stroking her daughter's cheek. You'll be staying here with Auntie Za for the day. I have to go take care of a few things, but I will be back tonight, and then we'll plan something fun to do together. Maybe see a movie. Amari nodded in agreement. Okay. Anaya dressed her little girl and then carefully combed her hair. Amari seemed composed, almost too composed for a child after yesterday's events. Or perhaps it was simply relief. Anaya couldn't be certain, but resolved to find a child psychologist for her daughter immediately. She knew she needed an expert to guide her daughter through this ordeal. At 10:30, Anaya finally departed. Za had jotted down the attorney's address on a note. The office was located downtown, on the 5th floor of a business complex. Anaya rode the metro, staring blankly as stations blurred past. Her mind was racing with questions. What would she tell the attorney? What paperwork was required? How fast she could finalize the divorce? The legal office was modest but immaculate. A youthful receptionist greeted her from the waiting area, offering a polite smile. You must be here for Miss Price. Please go in. She is waiting for you. Anaya entered the private office. A woman in her 50s, impeccably dressed in a sharp suit with a stylish short haircut and a sharp, focused gaze, rose and extended her hand. Rosalind Price, please, have a seat. Anaya took the offered chair. Miss Price retrieved a notepad and pen. Za called and gave me a brief overview. However, I would prefer to hear the story from your perspective, in detail. Anaya recounted everything from the previous evening until she and Amari fled to her sister's house, presenting the video from their home security system. Miss Price observed the footage intently, without a single interruption. Once the clip concluded, she nodded slowly. This is incredibly serious evidence. With this kind of proof, you'll have no issues securing a divorce and gaining full custody of your child. I don't want to take away his parental rights entirely, Anaya clarified, just so he is not living with us and his visits with our daughter are all supervised. That's reasonable. Miss Price noted something down. We'll proceed by filing for divorce on the grounds of irreconcilable differences, and we will document the emotional distress inflicted upon the child. We'll petition for restricted visitation, which means any visitation requires your express consent and must occur in your presence. How quickly can we do this? Divorce often takes 1 or 2 months via the courts, but given that a minor child is involved and we have proof of misconduct, we might be able to expedite things. Miss Price peered at Anaya over her spectacles. The apartment is in your name, correct? Yes, it was an Inheritance from my grandmother. Excellent. That means he has no claim to the property. What about joint assets? The car is registered to me. We purchased the furniture jointly, but those are minor things. He can have whatever he wants. All right. We will also be demanding child support. Not for me, for Amari. She is entitled to her father's support. Miss Price nodded. As she kept writing, their talk went on for 40 minutes, discussing details, documents, and timelines. When the W.S. Ever meeting concluded, the attorney offered Anaya her business card. If anything urgent arises, call me at any time. I will begin preparing the paperwork today. Return tomorrow to sign the petition, and we will file it with the court. Anaya departed the permanent office feeling an odd sense of relief. A difficult path was certainly ahead, but now she finally had a direction. There were clear, concrete steps, a solid plan of action. She made her way back to her sister's place, stopping at a market to buy some groceries. She would make dinner to show her gratitude to Za. While there, in the toy aisle, her eyes fell upon a stuffed animal, a little white rabbit with long, floppy ears. Amari had just mentioned wanting one. Anaya decided to buy the bunny as well. She arrived at her sister's house around 1 o'clock in the afternoon. Amari was on the sofa with Za, both of them absorbed in a movie and eating popcorn. The moment her mother appeared, the girl jumped up. "Mama, Auntie Za showed me old pictures of us at the beach. I was 3. Of course, I remember," Anaya smiled, holding her daughter close. "We went to Myrtle Beach then. You built sandcastles all day long." She then pulled the bunny from her bag, presenting it to Amari. "This is for you," Amari gasped audibly. Snatched the toy, hugging it tightly. "He's so soft. Thank you, Mommy." The remainder of the day unfolded in peaceful quiet. Anaya prepared dinner, frying chicken with a side of greens and making a salad. Amari assisted by setting the table, chattering about her day and laughing. Za told stories from work, drawing a few rare smiles from Anaya. That evening, they actually went out, going to the movies to see a new cartoon that Amari had been eager to watch for a long time. Sitting in the darkened theater, eating popcorn, for a brief time Anaya let herself just be there with her daughter, not thinking about the divorce, the court, or what the future held. The week flew by. Anaya officially filed the divorce papers. Miss Price handled it all with sharp competence. Jabari called repeatedly, his tone shifting from begging her to return to sudden fits of anger, accusing Anaya of tearing their family apart, before pleading for forgiveness once more. She ignored his calls, sending only a single text. "You have 1 week to be gone. Leave the keys with our neighbor." Exactly 1 week later, she and Amari went back home. Jabari was already gone, having taken his things, clothes, and laptop. He had left the keys with Miss Purley, just as Anaya instructed. The apartment felt empty and quiet, but it was a welcome, quiet, calm, and safe. Anaya went into the child's room, where Amari sat on her bed, looking around the room. "It feels strange without Dad here." She had grown accustomed to him. Anaya sat beside her. "Are you sad?" Amari considered it. "But I'm not scared. That's good, right? That is very good, my sunshine." Together, they unpacked the belongings they brought from Za's place. Anaya washed clothes and cooked dinner. Amari did her homework at her own desk, periodically asking her mother a question. A normal evening, one of many more that would follow. After Amari had gone to bed, Anaya sat in the kitchen for a long while with a cup of tea, staring out the window at the city at night, at the distant lights of other homes, wondering what was coming next. The divorce process would take time. Then she would have to rebuild their life, perhaps change jobs, or maybe enroll Amari in an activity. But the most important thing was that her daughter was safe. She would no longer have to sit on a cold balcony crying, or be afraid to walk into the kitchen just for water, nor would she flinch at the sound of loud voices. 1 month later, they were settling into their new life. The divorce proceedings were swift. Jabari did not contest the terms, apparently realizing he stood no chance. The court ruled in Anaya's favor, granting her full custody and awarding him the right to visit once every 2 weeks, but only in the mother's presence. Anaya enrolled Amari with a child psychologist, a kind woman in her 40s who had a gentle voice and very intelligent eyes. Following their third session, the psychologist told Anaya, "The girl is coping remarkably well. She has a resilient spirit, and most importantly, she can feel your support." That truly was the most crucial thing. Amari was genuinely changing right before her very eyes, becoming more open and cheerful. She started talking of school again, showing her drawings, asking for bedtime stories. One day, she asked, "Mama, could we go to the park on Saturday for the rides?" "Of course, sunshine, and we will buy ice cream." Cream, the biggest cone possible. Amari held her mother tightly, pressing close to her side. "I feel so safe with you." "Mommy, thanks for always protecting me." A knot formed in Anaya's throat. She embraced her daughter tighter, kissing the crown of her head. "I will always keep you safe, always, no matter what comes our way." That Saturday, they went to the park, rode the merry-go-round, ate candy floss and ice cream, and took photographs by the fountain. Amari giggled, dashing between rides, her eyes gleaming with delight. That same evening, when they got back home, Anaya helped her little girl into pajamas and tucked her into bed. Amari yawned, embracing her new rabbit. "Mama, will we always get to live like this? Just us, with no more fighting?" "Always," Anaya vowed. "We are a team, you and I, and nothing is ever going to split us up." Amari smiled and her eyes closed. Just moments later, she was already sleeping soundly, so peacefully, and free of nightmares. Anaya slipped from the room, pulling the door softly closed. She went onto the balcony, the very one where just 1 month ago she'd found her daughter crying. Now flowers bloomed in pots there. Anaya purchased them the prior week, geraniums, petunias, and little rose bushes. She placed a soft rug upon the floor and added cushions. This spot was no longer a place of sadness or fear. It was now their private nook. She settled onto a cushion, leaning her back to the wall, and watched the stars. The city hummed softly. Cars passed by on the street below. Nearby, music was playing. People were laughing. Anaya reflected on how much had transformed in 1 month, how frightening it was to make the choice to finally leave. The anxiety of filing for a divorce, but in this very moment, she realized it was truly the only correct choice. Her daughter felt happy, serene, and secure, and that was what mattered most. Anaya shut her eyes, breathing in the crisp evening air. Within her chest, she felt warmth and peace. Their future was waiting, still unknown, but filled with hope. They would face it all together, always side by side. Did you enjoy the story? And from what city? Are you tuning in? Let's connect down in the comments. If this story touched you, feel free to support me with a super thanks so I'm able to create more stories just like this one. Your kind support means the world. I'm really looking forward to reading your comments on this tale. You can now see 2 new life stories on the screen that I truly recommend. There is plenty more to find on my channel. Please don't forget to subscribe. I will see you in the next life story with all my love and respect.